and welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. I am your host, Kara R. Hunt, and with me is the wonderful Sherry Swalwell. How are you doing today, Sherry?
I am doing great. We actually have a little bit of a little bit of sun peeking through the clouds on this beautiful, chilly January day. I have my hot coffee. I have the fireplace behind me keeping me warm. Life is good. How are you?
Blessed to be alive, BTBA, as you love to say. Absolutely. I am excited. So it is what? Oh, my goodness. Can you believe 2024 is January 2024 is almost over.
I can't. I truly can't. It has gone by so fast. And, but yet, like I told you a couple weeks ago, I'm just like really excited. Like, I don't know if it's because God gave me the word thankful, but I was talking to a friend. Well, I was talking to a friend last year about this time, maybe February, maybe March, maybe just a little bit after, but right around a year ago. And the ending of November 22 was rough for our family. And the beginning of 2023 was rough too. But I remember thinking as the calendar flipped over, I'm like, okay, God, we've had a really rough fall season in 2022. 2023 has got to be better. Like it just has to. And so I remember in January, our dog got hurt. He tore his ACL. Our furnace went out. Didn't even notice. It just was really cold in the house. And I'm like, man, did it like drop down a little bit? And then I went over there and I noticed that it wasn't running at all. So the house was like 60s. And something else happened in January. And I remember telling my friend, I'm like, like God must have given me a different mindset because I am still believing that 2023 is going to be a good year. And so everything that is happening in 2023, I just have this mindset that, okay, our dog getting hurt is terrible, but he doesn't have to have surgery. It wasn't like $500 at the vet. He'll be okay. Our furnace, my husband does that for a living. He was able to fix it. He had the part. We were back up and running that night. No worries. Like our pipes didn't burst, nothing. And then whatever the other thing was, which I don't even remember now, which is a good thing because that means that whatever it was, I wasn't worried about it. God took care of that too. So I remember telling my friend, I'm like, in all honesty, if I want to be completely blunt, 2023 is not starting out that great. But yet I'm not seeing it as a horrible, terrible, no good, very bad year. I'm seeing it as, yeah, these things are happening, but God's taking care of it. God's taking care of it. So I guess I'm kind of in that same mode right now in 2024. Like I am just thankful. I'm just excited. God's got something planned. He's had our family in a transition season for many years, didn't know what he was transitioning us to. And I'm just excited to see what God's doing in our lives. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
I know, right? And it's not only is it a year to be thankful, which, by the way, we should be thankful every year. Just as Christians, just take on a mentality of thankfulness. It will change your life. Am I right, Sherry? As she was just speaking, it will absolutely just change your life. But we're also in a leap year, and which, like I said, I've always just found fascinating, by itself, exactly how all of that works. I don't know the history of it, though. You know what? And I feel bad as a homeschool mom. My boys are men now, but as a homeschool mom, I don't even think I delved into that. The history of leap year, why it happens, when it started, or anything like that. So I kind of feel like a bad mom right now. I know they don't care at this point in their lives, and I'm not sure how much it would have added to their academia, but it would have been a fun thing to just kind of talk about and tackle. But I mentioned leap year because in one of your books, and for those of you who have been joining us for January, this month we have been covering some of our books in our series. And last week we talked about my series, the Habakkuk series, and this week we're going to talk about Sherry's series, the Redemption of Green Pine series. And one of the reasons I brought up leap year is because one of the characters in her series has a birthday on leap year, and how her parents only allowed her to celebrate it like every 4 years. So tell us more about your series, Sherry.
So it's actually kind of funny because when I first started writing fiction, my kids were a lot younger, but I've always considered the ministry that God has given us, that it's a family ministry, not just a me ministry. And so my kids have helped me name the characters. My kids have helped me with birthdays. So this Four Musketeers group, Addie, Wynn, Owen, and Zane, I remember having a conversation with our daughter, and she was probably late middle school, early high school at this point. And she helped me, like I had kind of described the characters and their personalities. And so she helped me. So like Owen, he is so fun loving and just this amiable, just go with the flow, but yet like when the going gets tough, he's there. And he has 4 siblings, I believe. He comes from a large family. And so him, for instance, his birthday is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. So it just kind of goes along with his personality. Like it's one of those things. And so Wynn, who is treated as the slave or the servant in her house, the one who's forgotten, the one who's mistreated, the one who's just not respected at all, her birthday happens to fall on leap year. And it was our daughter who pointed out to me, she's like, Mom, she only gets to celebrate her birthday on her birthday once every 4 years. And The Road to Freedom, book 4, starts out, it's Wynn's book, and it starts out that her friends noticed that she never got a high school graduation party. Her parents wouldn't do anything for her. She didn't get any money. She didn't get any acknowledgement, any recognition for graduating from high school. She got nothing no type of celebration for graduating from community college. Her parents just really treated her as the outcast and the misfit of her family. And so her friends noticed this throughout the years. And she always was like, oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, I don't care. But everybody cares. Like everybody wants to be special at some point. And so book 4 opens with a surprise birthday party for Wynn thrown by Holly and Jace and her 3 friends. And her parents were invited and they wouldn't even show up. So it just really highlighted and pinpointed the loneliness and the way that Wynn expected to be treated, and then how she learned her identity in Christ and how much God loves her and how she's a daughter of the King and how that changes everybody's perspective. Owen, so book 6 is Redemption Full Circle. And this is where God wanted me to kind of tie up all the loose ends. It starts out with an action-packed scene. And if you read book 5, Path to Grace, the first chapter of book 6 is in book 5. And I have had so many people, unfortunately, as a self-published author with 4 different jobs, it's taken me a while to write book 6. At the time of our recording, hopefully book 6 is out. It should be, but barring any unforeseen things, it might not quite be. But check my website or subscribe to my email list, and then you will get up to date announcements of when it does come out. But so as of right now, hopefully book 6 is out. I've had a few glitches, but it should be published very shortly if it isn't already approved and for sale right now. But book 6 starts out with, or I should say, without giving anything away, the characters throughout the whole series have really continued and grown from where they were. And there's a lot more of a spiritual warfare element in book 6 because everything comes to a head. The evil gets eviler, the good gets gooder. I know those are not real words, but you can't really enjoy and you can't really appreciate redemption and restoration and grace and unconditional love by your Heavenly Father unless you have gone through the valleys. And so the first 5 books talk about the different valleys that are gone through or that have been gone through. And book 6, I wasn't sure when I was writing it who to focus the book on. And God just kind of revealed to me in book 1, you're introduced to Sean, Holly's brother. And Sean keeps everything together. He keeps the family together. He helps Holly go through the worst time of her life. He also is grieving and trying to deal with the trauma because it affected both him and his sister. But he kind of ignores it. Like, he does certain things to try to help relieve the stress. But as you and I both know in real life, when you ignore stress or when you don't deal with the underlying symptoms and the underlying issues, it will come out one way or another. Well, there's an exciting factor that happens at the beginning of book 6, and it blows Sean's world apart. He has flashbacks and he has memories, and he is finally forced to deal with the tragedy from years ago, decades earlier, and he then has to deal with the tragedy that happened in present day. So he ends up having PTSD and dealing with that. And so that's like the main storyline of book 6. But at the same token, I knew that there were so many different layers and so many different stories that needed to be wrapped up. And I myself, as a reader, want to know what happened to this people and these people and these people. And so it's actually being told in 4 different points of view. So the main point of view is Sean. Then we also have Officer Dave. We've never had his point of view before. We've never had Sean's point of view before either, because book 1 was told in Holly's point of view. Or wait, let me see. Maybe we did have Sean. So we might have heard briefly from Sean, but we've never heard from Officer Dave's point of view. Then we have Ariana's point of view, and then we have Holly's point of view. So those are the 4 main people that we hear from in order to get the full picture. And like I said, there's a much stronger element of spiritual warfare in this book. And I think that it happened naturally and organically because that's what happens in real life. Like in real life, you start out as a baby believer. You start out as someone who needs to learn how to trust God. You start out needing to learn how to pray, needing to develop your relationship with God. And the more that you grow closer to him, the more that you trust him, the more that you see God working in your life, the deeper your relationship with him grows. And the more the enemy comes up against you and the more battles you need to face. And so that's kind of book 6 in a nutshell, where it ties up most of the loose ends. There's still some question marks. Logan, Holly and Jace's, well, Holly's stepson, Jace's son, who is a 3rd grader at this point, he plays a big role in this book. And yeah, it's just really exciting. And kind of a side note, kind of like a insider scoop. Last summer, I feel like a broken record, but I've talked on this podcast many a time about how I just really was dealing with burnout last summer. And so I couldn't write because there was nothing in me to write. And the whole first part of the book, like the whole big inciting factor that the book starts out with, God gave me throughout the summer, to the point that there is something that happened involving Logan And I actually used action figures in my house to role play it to make sure that it was realistic. And that was so much fun. I'm like, could this really happen in real life? Is this something that could be believable? And it was, and it did. And I can't wait until you guys read it and tell me what you think. But there are definitely bits of humor throughout the book. There are definitely parts that made me cry as an author. And it just, I pray that it really brings to light the full circle of redemption, the full circle of restoration. Happily ever afters happen, but not always in the way that we think they're going to.
And those end up being the best HEAs, as they like to say in the writing world, the best happily ever afters, right? Is when they're not just given, they're earned. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, they're earned. And to me, those are just like the best happily ever afters. But most people in long-term relationships will probably tell you that the difficulties they experienced brought them closer to each other.
Yeah.
And made them appreciate the other person more, right? And then you can it's not like you're taking that person for granted or anymore. You may have been doing that previously, and then something happens and you're like, oh my goodness, what would have done, if you weren't here, tough times really make us realize what's important. And that's what I love about your books. The happily ever afters aren't just fluff. They're kind of earned,
Well, and
go ahead.
Me, I don't know about you, Kara, but for me, I don't feel authentic if every single person in the book has a happily ever after, because unfortunately, that is not the way the real world works. Like there can be a glimmer of hope, but that doesn't mean that everything is tied with a pretty bow when you say the end, because that's not the way the real world happens. So there's always hope. There's always a chance to pray for a miracle to happen. There's always, always, always a chance for redemption until we breathe our last breath. But that doesn't mean that when the end is written, that everything is tied up with a pretty bow and everybody has that APA.
Right. But that's real life.
Right.
That's real life. And those are the type of books that we write. We put in all the other elements of life, right? Like we were talking about how in one day in a person's life, you could laugh, you could cry, you could scream, you could be loved on, right? All in one day. Sometimes that can happen with some people before noon, right? So those type of things happen. And that's what I love about your books. They all happen, the HEAs happen naturally and organically. They don't seem forced upon us. So now I want to ask you, who so far in the entire series was your favorite person to write?
Oh, boy. I would probably have to say Holly, because to be honest with you, Kara, that's who I want to be. Like, I want to emulate. I strive to be like Holly. Like, she has her life together. She's not perfect by any means, but she relies on God so strongly that I want to be like her. So yeah, she was probably my favorite one to write. She was the one that was the most natural to write, because her responses were like the responses that you should have, the responses that people want to have, that you don't always have, but she does for some reason. And I didn't set out to write her that way. Like, I didn't set out to make her this, epitome of a person, but that's just kind of how she developed. Maybe as a stark contrast to all the rest of them that were much, much more imperfect and fallible. Like I said, not that she was perfect by any means, but I don't know. She was just really fun to write, because she was kind of like that compass that kind of kept people together. She wasn't supposed to be. She was truly supposed to be a minor character. And she ended up stealing the show. And yeah, although Chloe was really fun to write too. That was Jace's oldest daughter. And she had such a transformation from a worm, an ugly worm, to a beautiful butterfly. She matured so much between book 2 and book 6 that I loved watching her transformation happen naturally. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I love family. There are lots of different things that I put in the book that our family does. Holly's favorite drink or Holly's favorite coffee was white chocolate raspberry. That's my favorite. Doesn't mean I am Holly, but I threw that in there. Logan got a bearded dragon. We had a bearded dragon at our house. So little things like that I put in. So that just kind of made it fun. That was part of the whole, it's a family ministry, not just a me ministry thing. So not that my kids necessarily read my books, but if they ever do pick them up, I hope that they can find the little fun things about our family and our family's life, and that it will just make them smile.
Oh, yeah, where they could be like, oh, Mom put this in here,
Kind of like a little God wink for them, like just a little hug to say, I love you and you mean so much to me, and I value, having you as my child, and I just want you to know how much I love you and how much I love that about you. That's kind of why I put those kind of things in there. And it makes me feel closer to my kids too.
Right. And you never know, they may pick one up one day and be, and just read them. Yeah, because sometimes it's not until they're adults, because, as teens or how young adults or whatever, that type of generation just seems to be so busy. And starting their lives, and everything else. And so, which is why, but you know what? I was just thinking, and you don't really label it as so much as such, but your books are very YA friendly, young adult friendly.
Do you know how funny that is? Because I never even used to read YA. I hate to say this as an author, but I used to hate YA. I really did. And it's that whole God has such a sense of humor, because I was going to be traditionally published. I was going to only write fiction, blah, blah, blah. I don't like YA. And yet that is the group, that is what God has called me to write. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I kind of feel as though God is bringing me into a new season with my ministry, to where the YA can be really helpful with that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you're like, oh, I don't like that, but yet you end up writing it.
Yes. And
people say God doesn't have a sense of humor. Oh, exactly. He teaches us, doesn't he?
Yes. I have stopped saying, God, I won't, God, I'm not, God. And I've started saying, okay, I surrender. Whatever you want.
Yeah. Right, because it's the one thing that we say, and he's like,
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and they're because most of the characters in your books are young adults.
Yes, and I didn't set out that way. This was supposed to be a standalone about a husband and a wife who were stressed out and had stopped. Well, actually, to be completely honest with you, Kara, the first book to this whole series is centered around a song by, oh my goodness, it's coming, Sanctus Real. That song about, and I really wanted to put the song in the book, but copyright reasons I couldn't. Right. But it's that song that goes, lead me.
Right.
Lead me with strong hands. Stand up when I can't. Don't leave me feeling alone and whatever. I love that song. Love that song. And we were driving in the car and I heard that song, and Journey Back Home was born from that song.
Oh, I bet Sanctus Real would love to hear that.
Definitely.
We ought to tag them when we share the post about the podcast episode.
We should. That is seriously where this whole entire series came from. And then God gave me 2 separate dreams. The one dream became, well, no, I take that back. He has given me 3 dreams of 3 books, but the next series that I'm writing is 2 of those dreams. The other dream, the first dream, was book 4 with Wynn and Zane, Road to Freedom. And then the other ones just kind of came. Book 6 actually came about when I was having a conversation with my mom on Christmas break from school. And I was just taking a rare moment with downtime, and we sketched out the whole book 6. And for the most part, it stayed the same. God gives me twists and turns and changes things up for me. But yeah, I was like, I love how he does that. Like when he stops giving me the ideas and when he stops allowing me to do this, then I'm done. But I'm just so grateful. I have a 3-book series in the works that will come next. And then I have another 3-book series. I thought it was going to be a 2-book series. It's a very different concept. And I was talking to my oldest about it the other day, and he goes, Mom, you need to do a 3rd book with this angle. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're brilliant. So now that's another 3-book series that I'm going to be working on. So yeah, it's really fun. But you're right. I never thought I could write young adult. I never thought that I would be able to write young adult. And yet God just had me focus on that more than I thought he would, because book 1 is young adult. Book 4 and 5 are young adult. And then book 2, 3, and 6 are everybody.
Right. And it's, speaking of young adult, in book 6, Full Circle, you mentioned her briefly earlier, but will Chloe will we get a wrap up on her?
I was thinking about that, and her and Noah play a much smaller role in this book, but yet you'll still see them. You'll still visit. This book is mainly about Sean, but and Logan. Logan plays a bigger role than he has in any of the other books. But it's mainly about Sean, and it's about Officer Dave befriending Sean. Because at the end of book 5, Sean and Annie and their family move to Green Pines, which is an answer to Holly's prayer, because she wants her whole family there. And she's been praying for that ever since she moved there. So it's mainly about Sean, but it really wraps up everything. There's a couple of weddings in there, and there's a lot of different people to choose from that could get married. So I'm not giving spoilers away. There's some exciting announcements. It's just basically them living life and rallying around Sean in the community to help them heal from what happened at the very beginning. So I hope that it's as encouraging, and I hope that people are excited to read it, and they feel the closure that a person needs at the end of a series. So.
Oh, good. And well, that was my last question, since book 6 is, it's titled is Full Circle, book 6 of the Redemption series. And so it's kind of just go all the way back, it wraps everything up basically, with a lot of new exciting plots and storylines and twists at the same time. So is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
No, I have had so much fun this month of January, just sharing about my books, hearing more about the little behind the scenes things with your books. And I am excited to read Eve. I'm excited to read Mary. And I'm just excited to see what God's going to do this year. So next week starts our new series, Love versus Lust. I'm excited to start that series too. I think that's going to be a ton of fun to talk about. Again, I love marriage, family, parenting, all of those things. So it's going to be fun. If you need prayer or encouragement, please email us at cheeruppodcast@gmail.com. If you have an idea for us for another classic or long book, or as long as it's Christian themed, book for us to do this summer, whether 3 months, 1 month, whatever, 3 different books that go in a series. We're open for that too. Send us a email at cheeruppodcast@gmail.com. Give us your suggestions. We'll pray on them. We'll see what God says and where he leads us, and we'll keep you posted. And join our community Facebook group, Cheer Up Podcast, if you haven't already. And head over to Kara's website, kararhunt.com, and you can learn more about the Habakkuk series over there. She has some videos for you to watch. And also come over and hang out at sherryswalwell.com. You can learn about the podcast. You can learn about the monthly membership. That is a way for you to grow closer to God. You can figure out how to buy the books. They're all on Amazon, nonfiction and fiction. And we have resources that will help you start a relationship with God if you do not have one already, but you are searching. So John 16:33 reminds us that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I, Jesus Christ, has overcome the world. We are so glad that you're here. We're so glad that you have joined us celebrating our 4th year, wrapping up our 3rd season. And we have lots more of good things to come. Have a great rest of your day and have a fabulous week.